At Salon Talks, we've welcomed guests who have authored cookbooks, and we've welcomed many actors, but we've never had one who is a master at both. I'm pleased to welcome Madhur Jaffrey to the show. Madhur's acting accolades include winning a Silver Bear at the Berlin International Film Festival, and as the Dame of Indian Cooking, she has received an honorary Commander of the Order of the British Empire. This new book, Madhur Jaffrey's Instant Indian Cookbook, is about using the Instant Pot, and probably the last Instant Pot book anybody needs to read, because there have been so many. But this one is vital.
It is. Can't live without it.
And it's vital because you do talk a lot about how to use the Instant Pot and how to improve upon the instructions that are given in the Instant Pot. But you also tour the Indian cuisine regions and using the different techniques, the steaming, famously, the pressure cooking, and the sautéing functions.
Right.
And that's and so it's a great way of using a tool-based book and to describe a cuisine. One of the things that the Instant Pot does famously is cook rice, and you've even improved on the way that rice is cooked in the pot. Could you talk to me a little bit about?
Yeah. You know, rice is a very important aspect of a lot of Asian cooking, not just Indian cooking. And we do not like al dente rice. We do not like a hard core in the middle of the rice, which is what Italian a risotto would suggest. And so the recipe that is given in the actual booklet that comes with the Instant Pot is for rice that has a hard core. And for Asians, that doesn't work. For me, it doesn't work with anybody. But I don't like that kind of rice. So I had to work out a way of cooking rice that's fully cooked but is firm and the grains are separate. And the Instant Pot does not achieve that the way it is. They have, different, you can make soup. There's a button for soup, there's a button for rice, there's a button for sauteing, there's the buttons for every function. And the button for rice I do use. Yeah. But first I soak the rice in a certain amount of water, then I drain it, then I add a certain amount of water, which is not what the book says. And then I put it into the pot, hit the rice function, and go to bed. Right.
Now, is it less water, or is it more water than it's called for?
It's soaked first, and then there is less water.
Less water, right.
So it's a combination of doing something to separate the grains, because, rice comes with a kind of powder. When you mill it, there's a powder that scatters around the rice grains.
Right.
And sticks to them. You want to wash that out.
That's what the rinsing is for.
That's what the rinsing for. Right. So the grains, which in basmati rice get long and oh so elegant. Yeah. So you allow them to get long and elegant, and as the Indians say, rice should be like brothers, close together but not stuck to each other. So that's how basmati rice has to be cooked.
Right. And there's even an instruction in the book about how when you're taking the rice out of the pot.
Right, because people make rice quite decently, then they mess it up when they take it out of the pot. They just go in and plonk, and you can't do that.
Right.
So what I do is, if this is the pot, you go in very carefully, you get a wooden spatula, a plastic spatula with the pot.
Right.
You go in on the side, turn at right angles,
right,
and go in. Then you take out the whole bit, put it in your serving plate, and then break it, either with the back of a spoon or with the spatula.
Right.
Break it lightly so the grains don't break in two.
Right.
That's very important.
So and that spatula that comes with the pot has a very sharp edge too.
It has a sharp edge and it's flat.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, we've sorted out the rice problem for everybody.
That's done. We got it.
Now, one of the things about the book is that you've assigned that because it has a steaming function and it has a sautéing function and a pressure cooking function, you've been able to sort of move around India and highlight certain cooking techniques. Steaming is one that, I cook a fair amount of Indian food to greater or lesser effect, but steaming isn't one of the things that I think of when I...
Well, this is the thing. India is so huge that when I was growing up in Delhi, which is in the north, I hardly knew every technique that's used in the south or the west coast or the east coast, because it's as big as Europe.
Yeah.
You don't know everything.
Right.
And I'm still learning. But however, steaming I knew existed in South India and Western India, because they make a lot of dishes that the initial ingredient is rice. So they make rice noodles, of various sorts. They make rice cakes of various sorts, and they're all steamed. So they have steaming gadgets. And people who collect old Indian utensils, which are amazing,
Yeah.
the old ones were made out of bamboo, like the Chinese, very similar bamboo, or big pieces of bamboo in which you could shove in rice and coconut and then steam it.
Like in a roll kind of thing?
In a roll,
Yeah.
and you pushed it out and you ate it with bananas and milk in the morning.
Right.
So it was a cereal.
So,
and
it
it's
was
still eaten.
served cold? Or
It's at room temperature.
Yeah.
Everything in South India, because it's 80 degrees. It's
everything's 80 degrees.
Everything is at room temperature. So you got this whole roll, and then you could cut it.
Right.
And everybody got that with some bananas and some milk, and that was your breakfast. It still is, but now the containers are steel. All the old bamboo is just vanishing, and wood and things like that are all going. And there were all kinds of, for example, noodles that you do by putting them in a little sort of container with different sized holes you can put at the bottom.
Right.
So you turn it,
And it forces it through.
Yes, so there's another kind of, I think it's called, it's a kind of idli, but it's noodles.
Right.
So and they're rice noodles.
Right.
So you do it like that, you have a small plate, and you do it like that, you oil the plate. Then you do it and get all the noodles out on the little plate, and you have several little plates that you steam then in a steamer.
Right.
And then you eat them. There's so many different ways to eat them. You can eat them with
like a big fancy sauce or a very simple.
Yeah.
Like
You can
garnish?
have them for dinner with a fish curry, a really spicy fish curry.
Nice.
Ooh, yum. Or you can have it in the morning for breakfast with coconut milk, freshly squeezed coconut milk that is flavored with cardamom.
Right.
So you just pour that on top,
Right.
and it's so yum.
And actually,
Come to India with
yes,
me.
can I come?
Show you
love
all
nothing
this.
more.
It's so really delicious. You can't imagine.
Yeah. So one of the notes, the very, very smart, quick notes that you give is, because we were just talking about coconut milk, is how to separate thick coconut milk from the thin
Right.
coconut
So
milk.
what happens is that when you make real coconut milk and you squeeze it out, the cream rises to the top. Right. So you take that out, and what is left is rather thin, watery coconut milk. So let's say you're cooking whatever dish it is. Let's say you're cooking meat.
Right.
So you cook the meat in the watery one.
Right.
And then put the other one right at the end.
So it's a stewing base, is that right, for meat?
Right, and then you put the other one, the rich one, at the end, because you don't want it to cook too much or it'll turn to oil.
Right.
So
Because there's so much oil in it.
So much oil in it. So
and sugar too? Is that where the sugar is, or?
the sugar would be more in the creamy part.
Yeah.
Natural sugar.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. No sugar added.
No sugar added. No, definitely not.
And we were talking about bamboo and Chinese influence, and one of the recipes in here, which I think is for the pressure cooking function of the Instant Pot,
Yes.
is you talk about the border with China and the influence of Chinese food on the cuisine in that region. Is it Kashmir?
Well, it's where the Chinese traded.
Okay.
There are different kinds of influences from China. One was where they traded. So in Calcutta, there's a Chinatown.
Okay.
And over the years, the Chinese cuisine and the Indian cuisine got sort of merged.
Right.
And they have this mixed,
Right.
like this famous Mongolian cauliflower that they do, which I find a bit inedible, but there you are. People
It's
love
not
it.
in this book, though.
No, it's not in this
This
book.
was
I put another
pork
cauliflower,
chop,
a
right.
wonderful cauliflower in this book, which you must make. Because people think you can't make vegetables. I'm going off the track a little bit.
No.
But there's a wonderful cauliflower in this dish, in this book, which you only cook for 1 minute under pressure. And it's done. You don't need to cook it anymore because it's just, you saute the spices first, put the cauliflower in for 1 minute.
Just give it a bang.
Yes, and then that's it. You take it out, you stir it all again, you dry out if there's any water. It's perfect, perfect. Crunchy and perfect.
That would totally
So what was I talking about? I went off.
Oh, we were talking about regions in India.
Yeah. So I was talking about Chinatown, wasn't I?
Yeah.
So there are different influences because the Chinese have traded for thousands of years and there are different periods of influence. So in the Chinatowns of Calcutta, for example, you'll find a lot of these mixed kind of dishes and some very almost pure Cantonese type.
Oh, really?
Yes, you will find those as well. So, but there's always been, this is so funny to me, on the table will be a little bowl of vinegar and green chilies. This is Chinese Indian. You'll find that in every Indian Chinese restaurant. So Indians have to have their green chilies to put on top. But they're soaked in vinegar.
So what's the best combination, do you think, of the Chinese and the Indian cuisine? Like, what is it? This pork chop recipe you have in here.
You're right. That's my creation.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if other people can combine Chinese and Indian,
well, that's what I was thinking.
Right.
So I'm curious, like you were like, it's got to have the anise or the, you know.
Well, it has to have soy sauce.
Okay.
And it has to have, with soy sauce always comes a little sugar. Because you almost don't use soy sauce without using a touch of sugar to mellow it in some way. So I thought, why not make these pork chops? And I created this pork chop dish, which had soy sauce. And it was the one dish that my kids took to college with them. They said, can we have the pork chops?
That's that right? Yeah. I took an Indian, my father did his postdoc in London, and he had a roommate whose name was Johnny Tar Muhammad, and he was Indian from Uganda.
Yes.
They got a curry recipe from his mom from using a phone booth in London, feeding the phone booth. While my dad transcribed the recipe, which he had transcribed as a vindaloo. I don't think it was a vindaloo, but I remember my dad making these dinners and having all the guys around, and a big party around this curry, and that was the dish that I took with me to college.
Well, there you go. You see, there's always something that your family makes that you will always want. And the vindaloo, if it was coming from Uganda, it was coming from quite possibly people who were from that region, from Goa or someplace like that, some Portuguese territory. Because the essentials in a vindaloo, as vin part of it was, of course, wine, but it was usually vinegar. And alyush was the garlic. So those are the two essentials. And chilies. But they're special chilies. They're Kashmiri chilies. And Kashmiri chilies have the quality of being very red and of medium strength. So you can put spoon after spoon, and it'll get hot, but not so hot that you can't eat it.
So, and that was the more I learned about Indian food, the more I realized this wasn't a vindaloo because there was no vinegar in it. There were lots of things, and there was even mustard oil, and I don't think that was part of it, but there was no vinegar.
But it could have been a very good take.
Oh no, it's my dad's curry, you know. I take it with me forever. But also Goan curries, because of the Portuguese influence, were often pork, right?
They grew pork, if you can say that. There were pigs in every household. And talking about these mixed cultural dishes, one of the dishes I have in the book, which you must make, which I love, is the mulligatawny soup. And the mulligatawny soup...
It's different.
We don't know where it originated, but it was obviously the British like their soups. I certainly felt as an Indian that if you don't give the British soup, they'll die. They'll wither away. They need their soup, infusion of soup.
And it has to be mulligatawny a lot of the time.
That's one of them. But so Indians we copied the British.
Yeah.
So we had soups,
Yeah.
just like you. But mulligatawny came about, I'm sure, when a European wanted a soup, Indian-ish,
Right.
but
not two.
But not too. Yeah. Just something that he could have as a soup with rice, but that was sort of Indian-ish.
Right.
And so they created that. And it has become what we call, there's a whole community of people called Anglo-Indians, or people of mixed race, who've been there for 400 years now or more. And it is their favorite soup. So when India became independent, a lot of people, Anglo-Indians, were leaving because they were going home.
Right. That's something,
So,
right?
but England didn't welcome all of them.
Right.
So some of them went to Australia. So this particular family that my sister knew very well were migrating to Australia. And I said, before you go, could I please have your mulligatawny soup recipe? And they gave it
And
to
this
me.
is that.
Yes.
This is that. Yeah. And there's also a Gujarat family in South Africa that clearly is
That's
a
right.
big influence on you.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, the food was, again, these are people, they probably came as traders
Right.
to South Africa because the British brought Indians of various sorts for various reasons. Right. They came as labor, indentured labor. Right. They came as to work on the railways. Right. They came for all kinds of reasons that the British needed them there for a purpose. But some came on their own to trade because the Gujaratis are very outgoing people who've left India easily, not like other Indians who say we can't cross the waters, we'll get unpurified. Right. But Gujaratis have been more adventurous.
Right, like a wanderlust.
Yes, and go on and trade.
Okay.
And they have a very good sense of trade and money. And so this was such a family. Right. And it was one of their recipes. And of course, it depends on when you come because you remember Indian food from the period you left it.
Right.
So you have foods of different periods that have come from India into Africa, South Africa. Right. And so they made some of the most amazing dishes, which one of them I have in the book. It's a red kidney bean dish. And then I have their soup.
There's two in there.
Oh,
that's right.
And there's a soup, mango soup.
Right.
That is so good.
That's one of these tags.
Gosh, that mango soup. I know one New York Times writer had it made for his wedding.
Right.
Wedding dinner.
That's great.
Because he just loved that soup.
And the picture of the mango soup is so beautiful in the book. It's this stunning sort of golden.
Yeah, golden
color.
Orange color. Yeah.
And you spend a fair amount of time in the book talking about color. I'd love to talk about color in the cuisine. And the place of the sort of reds and yellows. But you tell me.
Right. And greens.
Greens. Yeah.
Green chutney.
Right.
Yeah, that's green.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll put them together. For example, if you're making a street snack, the two colors or three colors that you'll find is on top of the snack will be yogurt, which gives it a certain color and consistency and taste. There'll be tamarind chutney, which is gleaming brown.
Right.
And
it's like
then
an ochre color
green
too,
coriander
right?
chutney, which is bright green.
Right.
And they'll all be on the snack.
Right. And that color, everybody makes the joke about food and food styling that all food is brown.
Yes.
This is one of great
Indian
cuisine.
food, they associate only brown.
Only brown, right.
Yeah.
But there's always, and you use paprika, not smoked paprika, to achieve that great ruby red color.
That I do in America, but I cannot get the pure Kashmiri chili that I can get in India.
Right.
I can't get it. And there are other chilies. It's not just the Kashmiri chili. There's another chili that grows in Karnataka, which is the Bergi chili. And it also is very red and not so hot.
Right.
So there are many regions that have their own chili. Once we got the chili, we just said, come on, babe.
Right, we're going to husband 1,000 different kinds.
We can do a lot with you.
Yeah.
And we didn't get the chili till, the 16th century, 15th.
Is that right?
Yes. It came into India, but it then almost replaced black pepper. There used to be recipes in India that had 2 tablespoons of black pepper.
Right.
Those you find still in places like Malaysia, where early immigrants went and settled.
Oh.
So that's fascinating.
Right.
That aspect is fascinating, isn't it?
So when were they leaving to Malaysia when they were bringing black pepper with them, in the 40s kind of thing? Or
No.
way before that?
18th, 19th.
of course, when before the
19th
chili.
century. Yeah,
Right,
because they
right,
needed labor there.
Right.
The
right.
English, sorry about that, but the English needed labor to go into the mines, to clear the rubber forests. I mean, clear forests to grow rubber.
Right.
That was the idea.
Yeah.
And they got Chinese labor and Indian labor.
Right. The one other thing that's in here that you make an accommodation for in the quiz, in the sort of for the American audience is goat.
Yeah. So there are not too many goat recipes, but people should look for goat because it's a less fatty meat.
Right.
It's a very delicious meat once you discover it. But you have to know what to buy. If you're making a goat curry, for example, I would go to the butcher, which we have in the New York City area. We have lots of them in Queens.
Right.
So you ask for pieces from the neck. You ask for some breast chops-like things.
Right.
And then you want bone. You want marrow bones.
Right.
So
Where do they come from?
Well, they can come from the shank, they can come from the leg, they can come from the shoulder, you know.
Right.
More from the shank and the leg, I think.
Right.
But shoulder meat is also very good. So you combine, so you have different textures of meat.
Right.
And there will be bone because the meat next to the bone is always the best.
Right. Yeah. And that's because of the collagen.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly, which I love.
Yeah. Collagen melts and becomes something else delicious.
Something else
Yeah, it breaks down,
absolutely
yeah.
delicious, which makes the curry the curry.
Right. And it gives it that great shiny
Yes.
right, quality to it. Well, this is an amazing book about a fantastic tool, the Instant Pot, but about so much more. Madhur Jaffrey, thank you so much for joining me
Thank you.
today on Salon Talks. Thank you.
Thank you.